want to start off by telling you about an email I received a few years ago. The subject of the email read, Dad's Obituary. I was a little confused because my dad was still alive. And I called him up to find out what this was about. And he said, someday I'm going to die, and someone's going to have to write it, so who knows my life better than I do? So this started an annual tradition. My dad revises his obituary every year, and he's gotten pretty creative with it. And we have a conversation about death. We talk about our end-of-life wishes, we ask each other questions, and we learn things about each other we otherwise wouldn't have learned. Recently on one of these calls, my mom picked up the other line and she said, I just want to remind you that at my funeral, I want the Ave Maria playing, but at my reception, the Bee Gees. We've continued to have these conversations about death because each of us have witnessed how hard it can be for survivors when death is never discussed. 57 million people who are alive right now will be dead in 12 months. But most of us, we don't talk about it, and we do little to prepare for our own death. Instead, we focus on our immortality projects, the corporate empire, children, grandchildren, wealth building, a religion or a cause. These seemingly everlasting legacies that we hope will extend our lives. We perpetuate the illusion that no one dies. Elvis is still in the building. Jackie, Marilyn, Princess Diana, they still grace the covers of our magazines as though they never left us. And Tupac, the hip-hop artist who died 16 years ago, he performed this summer as a hologram. Maybe it's like teen sex. Maybe we believe that if we just don't talk about it, death won't happen. But why do we avoid it? Survey says it's depressing. I'll get to it later. If I focus on it, I'll manifest it. It's uncomfortable. I'd rather focus on life. I'll be gone. Who cares? I'm too young to think about death. It's overwhelming. It is overwhelming, and more so now than ever. It used to be a will in a file, a key in a top drawer, a box full of letters. But now our lives exist on computers and in the cloud. Think about your online passwords. You can't keep track of them. I can't. How do we expect our loved ones to decode our lives when we're gone? Technology, it's made our lives easier, but it's made our deaths more complicated. A college freshman dies, and his parents can't access his online accounts for answers. Facebook sends birthday reminders for the deceased. And a colleague emails pyramid schemes from the grave. Someone's hacked her account. But it's not just technology. Medicine also complicates our deaths. Now machines can keep us alive, but how many of us have had conversations with our families about our end-of-life wishes, and how many of us have actually signed paperwork to empower them to make those decisions on our behalf? You'd be shocked by how few. This is a friend of mine. Whew. She was diagnosed with cancer and pregnant, and doctors told her she would not survive. Her husband approached her with the medical directive paperwork, and he said, "We need to talk about this." But each time she'd take those papers and throw them across the room and say, "I'm not signing my own death certificate. I'm going to fight this." But he was persistent. He returned to her and he said, with tears in his eyes, "Please, this isn't just for you. Your death, it's not just about you. Most of us don't realize how loved we are and how much your death will impact the people around you. I want you to picture the face of the person who will likely handle your details when you die. Really get that picture in your mind. What decisions will they make that you've been putting off? What paperwork will they muddle through without your input? And what surprises will they find? By preparing for our own death, we give our family a light and a map when they're at their most vulnerable. We decrease the chance of family arguments and confusion after we're gone. But you know what? It's not just about paperwork and tasks and details in the business of death after you die. There's something more here for us. We're the only species that we know of who can contemplate our own death. Yet, most of this contemplation goes on within the walls of our own minds. We don't talk about it. I see death as this vast, untapped resource in the space between us all. And by tapping into that resource and actually talking about our deaths with the people we love, we can change our lives now. We can impact our relationships now, bringing understanding, peace of mind, compassion. When I first started having conversations about death with the people I love, it was scary. I cried a lot, and I hated the thought of one day one of us not being a phone call away. Or what would it be like to empty out someone's closet, who I love, of all those special things that have come to remind me of them? How awful that would be. It was like heartbreaking. But the more we had these conversations, like anything we practice, it got a little easier. And the conversations have grown deeper and richer and even sometimes kind of fun. What if instead of seeing death as this last taboo subject to avoid, what if we started seeing it for what it really is? This point of connection between all of us, something everyone in this room shares. We don't have to do it all at once, and we don't have to do this alone. It starts with one conversation, and it starts by really seeing that facing your death, it's an act of love. Thank you.